I plan on living in Montreal for the rest of my life. I love this city. I love it here.
It's hard to tell what's going to happen in general, but for now, I mean, I don't have any plans to leave. I don't have any plans to stay necessarily either. But for now, the only reason I'm not leaving is I have no reason to. It's really excellent here. We have the best of a lot of things. We have the cold. If you have some activities that you like in the wintertime, I do. You have great activities that are possible here. We have great, amazing summertime, which is even better because it comes after the cold season. So if it was always warm, we wouldn't appreciate it as much. In terms of possibilities, I mean, the art community in Montreal is huge and is super interesting, and there's possibilities that are, you can make a living off of art probably forever in Montreal if you apply yourself, and there's enough people you can meet to make it happen. It's hard to say. I don't think I would be leaving on a permanent basis, and if I did leave, I would probably still have my heart would still be here for a very long time, and I would probably, if I left, let's say for example, I left to go live somewhere else, even if it were to be forever until I die, I would probably be living there until I were to quote unquote come back to Quebec, because I would still be from here and would be wanting to come back here.
Yeah, I plan on staying in the province. Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, I want to say Montreal is so diverse, so multicultural. But Toronto is very multicultural, Vancouver is very multicultural, but Montreal is just home, and I'm very close with my family. My family's here, and I would be really sad to completely lose my French. And if I move to Toronto or somewhere where I'm not speaking French every day, then I'm going to lose it. I know that, so I want to keep that.
Planning on staying in the province? If I stay in Canada, I'll stay in the province. I have had projects. I mean, if I had less ties, I'd probably move to Austria. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that has to do with family. Like, that's my priority in my own personal life, is to be near my family. So, and they're here. So, and they have no interest in moving, obviously. I think if I left, it would be for a brief period of time, sort of just to see other places and experience other cities, maybe in Canada or in the world. It would be a nice experience to go. But I think definitely this is the city, particularly, for me to live in.
Faire ma vie, tu veux dire?
Ouais.
Non. Dans l'absolu, si je demande mes préférences, non. Je dirais que j'aimerais bien aller vivre au chaud. J'aimerais bien aller vivre où il fait chaud. C'est un beau pays, le Québec. C'est un beau pays, le Québec. C'est une belle province, le Québec. Malheureusement, il y a plein de mauvais côtés. Il y a des bons côtés, il y en a des mauvais. Je suis contente que ma famille soit ici puis que mes amis soient aussi ici pour que je sois obligée de revenir régulièrement. Mais j'aimerais bien aller vivre à l'étranger.
I like it here. Not because of the cultural differences, but because of the geographical location more. I enjoy skiing, and I don't know. I like the idea of being in this climate and being in Canada. I like Canada, ultimately. I like BC too. That'd be another consideration.
There's this fear in French Canada of their culture being robbed. They're scared of disappearing. And it's a legitimate concern, but I think they're much farther from the precipice than they think they are. Anglophone Canada is at a larger risk of being swallowed into American culture.
French language?
Honestly, I'm not very big into politics, but one of my friends that I grew up with is, and it came up in discussion once we were talking about the separation of Quebec and what he thought about it. And he studied in politics in university many years, and well, obviously, if I say I'm not much into politics, he knows a lot more about it than I do. And he said something I found interesting, and it's not something that I necessarily agree with, but I do find it interesting. He said, I truly hope Quebec separates from Canada just to get it over with. And what he meant by that was, if we can get this out of the way and move on to something else, then maybe finally we'll be able to make something happen. Because for the last, I don't know how many, decades, we've been stuck with this on our plate, and we're just, re-arguing the same old points over and over and over again. And it's not that, I get the impression it's never going to be over until we actually do separate, because there's always going to be the separatist movement, and until that's happening, we're not going to be able to move forward. And I thought that was an interesting point.
I really just hope that Quebec can find a way to really keep the French language and culture alive, but continue to exist within Canada and be part of Canada, and sort of participate in Canadian politics and economy, but really keep the French language and culture alive. I don't know if that's really, I don't know how many generations they can keep it up for. I know outside of Montreal, everyone just speaks French. There are very few people who speak English outside of Montreal, but they have to leave their small villages and regions anyway to get jobs and go to university, so I don't know what future there is for French in Canada.
As far as borders and cultures and conflict go, less is more for me. So if everybody could be bilingual, that would be great. But I really wish that the government would stop putting all the energy and the effort into, pushing against the flow that makes everybody want to speak the same language. I find it's counterproductive. And if everybody spoke if the whole world just spoke the same language, then people might get along better. And I think that you can let it happen gradually, but pushing against it, I think, is rather nonsensical.
Hopes, fears, predictions. Okay, so my hope is that we live in harmony all together, peace, happiness for all. And my fear for sure is that we'll lose Quebec culture, and I understand that that's a potential issue in the future. So I don't know how the best way to preserve it is, but I would hope that we find a way to do so, because I think it's pretty unique that we have this situation here, that we live, French and English and a bilingual society. So I think that's pretty great. But and predictions. I'm going to be an optimist and predict that we end up on my hope side of the peaceful happiness, everybody living in harmony together. Yay.
It's frustrating because it's like uphill, straight line. There's no gradual climb. It's just 90-degree up. That's the kind of battle that First Nations are facing in this country. Why don't we just all respect each other and get along and build this country together properly, instead of just dealing with this racial rhetoric, which is never going to get us anywhere. It's going to keep all the people separated and not really understanding each other.
I think the French language will live on, even if Quebec necessarily doesn't in the longest of futures. I think mostly that's a mindset and stubbornness. Ultimately, there's many countries where people speak 2 or 3 languages, and even if Quebec wasn't around, I don't think the borders or the cities would really make people speak French or English. Keep getting smaller as the states need more water and land. We'll slowly shrink away to a little border of Inuit. That'll be us later on. And we'll be living in the States.
Oh, wow. Moi, je fais confiance à la vie. En général, c'est ma façon de voir l'avenir. Maintenant, je vois que tranquillement, on perd de notre culture, effectivement. On perd des écailles un peu. Je pense qu'il ne faut pas perdre de vue nos ancêtres. Il ne faut pas perdre de vue qui était là avant nous. Moi, j'essaie de garder un bon contact avec mes grands-parents qui sont très, très proche de l'ancienne, de la culture très québécoise de l'époque. Et j'aime ça être en contact avec ça. C'est comme n'importe quelle culture, c'est toujours beau, c'est différent. Donc, la différence du Québec, de la langue française, ici, on est tellement une petite gang de Gaulois résistants aux invasions qui nous assomment de partout. Je trouve qu'on fait bien. On a un bon office de la langue française au Québec qui va jouer avec des mots, ne plus appeler un mail, un courriel, trouver des mots qui vont aller plus avec la langue française, qui sont plus adaptés avec notre langue au lieu d'utiliser toujours des anglicismes. C'est quelque chose que je trouve qui est génial au Québec. On est capable de faire des beaux jeux de mots, des belles traductions avec des mots anglais, puis de les utiliser en français. J'aimerais ça, c'est sûr, évidemment, qu'on résiste assez longtemps pour que ça persiste dans le temps. Mais en même temps, je suis pour le métissage culturel. Je trouve que le métissage culturel, ça enlève des barrières entre les cultures. Mais en même temps, comme j'ai dit il y a pas longtemps, les cultures, c'est tellement beau quand c'est différent. Donc, ça crée une espèce d'amalgame. Je pense que si on n'aura pas le choix, vu la grandeur de la province du Québec, il y a des gens de perdus un petit peu partout, d'étalés un peu partout sur notre province, ce qui fait que ça donne une distance entre les influences. Il y a des gens qui sont un petit peu plus loin de ces influences-là. Puis je pense qu'effectivement, en région, oui, ça va durer, on va pouvoir perpétuer cette culture-là longtemps. En ville, par contre, c'est plus dur de garder son identité culturelle.
This kind of debate is almost dated. This nationality, having and running your own country in terms of preserving your culture is an outdated notion. If you look at the way Europe is going, borders are becoming thinner and easier to cross, and Europe is becoming more of a unified whole than a place with small divided countries. They're sharing a currency, sharing train and transit systems, and I think this is something that Canada almost has, because if you look at Halifax and you look at Alberta, you're looking at completely different cultures, which are almost different countries, but we share a lot of the infrastructure, and I think a decentralized government is something that might be beneficial to all the provinces, not just Quebec.